Okay, now we will move on to the next session. It is in fact a one-on-one interview. So for this interview, it is my great honor to invite MK Yuli Edelstein. He is the head of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee and former Speaker of the Knesset and Minister of Health. You can applaud. You can applaud. We don't charge for applause. This interview will be held by Sefi Ovadia, a political correspondent and commentator from Channel 13 News. Good evening, everyone, and you, sir, the chair of the Committee for Defense and Foreign Affairs of the Knesset and former Speaker of the Knesset and Minister of Health and Absorption and Aliyah. I have the privilege to open this conversation with not the most hot potatoes that were mentioned here during the past couple of hours, but rather on a social topic, what is happening to us as a society, which also touches the question of our national security. And what I believe is a question you should answer now, maybe not the most fair question to ask you of all people, because your stance was more complex than others people, but you are here as the representative of the Likud. How can we trust you to be able to manage this event from now on after having failed to do so? The Minister of Justice, of all people, admitted with his own voice that if this would have happened, democracy, Israeli democracy, would have been harmed. That he said that on an interview on Channel 14. And the people of the Kohelet Forum, who are the living spirit behind this, they also admit that the legislation, as was primarily introduced, would cause terrible damage to the Israeli democracy. So was it negligence, horrible negligence, and you are not trustworthy, or was it malice? Look, as you yourself mentioned, I can give my own position. When what is called judiciary reform was presented, was introduced, and undoubtedly I will tell you that I'm part of the majority in the public who thinks that changes regarding the checks and balances in the judiciary should be performed. But the way to do that, and also some of the clauses, seemed to me, to say that, quite weird, that I could say. And as I said, and you also mentioned, it was in January, 2 months after that, other people who are leading the reform also started saying that. How could they not see that an automatic majority to the coalition in the committee for appointing judges is a situation that is absolutely impossible to govern this state? Whether we're talking about controlling it or not controlling it, any coalition that is rising will appoint its own judges, which is an absurd. But it's better to understand rather later than never, and it's a good thing they understood it. Now that's the difference between me and some protesters standing with a sign at the junction. I must bring a solution, and I still believe that we can come to an understanding in the dialogue in the president's domicile, and it's not simple. We have anxiety and frustration, or vice versa, and everybody is suspicious of each other endlessly. But I think that we all must come to this understanding, calming down the situation, changing what we can with understanding, leaving everything else aside, or else we will not reach anything. Only to close on that point, if we do not come to understandings, the person who is managing this whole event is the Minister of Justice and the Prime Minister, who, according to one of them at least, if the public would not be standing in the streets, this would have happened, and the measures, according to the Minister of Justice, would harm democracy. So I repeatedly am telling you, as in every negotiation, you are quite an expert just like me, and when people negotiate for coalition, for a government, so of course there is artillery in the media on both sides, and this is the same thing that is happening now. Telling you that I'm not upset about it, I am. I'm quite upset about it. But being naive as not characteristic for me, that I thought that after I made a huge effort to bring to the dialogue, it would calm people down, but it didn't happen. So I'm still saying, the people sitting at the presidents are the ones managing this event, and I am in touch with many of them. And they are resilient and determined to find a solution. You know what? One day I'm more optimistic, on another day I'm less optimistic. But as a principle, I do think, as in the song that everybody loves singing, I have no other country, I can paraphrase and say we have no other option. Let's move on to your day job. So you are the chair of the Committee for Foreign Affairs and Safety, and we've seen all the highest ranking IDF people here during the past 24 hours, and they all summed up saying that the North is very explosive. So you are very knowledgeable, familiar with the intelligence stance. What do you think the public should know or not know? Are we about to see something developing in the northern borders of Israel? I almost said I wish it was only the North our problem, because I think that the true problem is that we will find ourselves in a multi-arena event. It might explode from the north or from the south. I also must, calm people down. So I would say it doesn't mean necessarily that I see, when I get materials in the morning, that I see the red side of our enemies are being deployed to start something happening. No. But as we know, I'm sorry, and it's not the radio or television. I'm not going to stop you a lot, but I do have to stop you now and ask, because you might have a perspective from recently, but before the terror attack in Megiddo, when you were sitting with the advisor of the intelligence, did you see any realistic alarms about that? I mean, maybe, because if you didn't, then maybe we still have something coming. We did have alarms, but he was able to achieve in this case. That was the result. But we've heard from people who are relevant how it happened, why it happened, etc. And I truly hope that we've learned our several lessons from that. But we must. I'm holding on to this specific example that you brought on this case. We have planning, we have reality. And if we would describe that he blew up not on a car and hurting one person rather, but if, as he planned, to go on a bus and something like that, I mean, can you imagine how this would have happened? Or one rocket from the last operation that would have been missed by Iron Dome and land in the wrong place, how would that happen? So the way we prepare ourselves is for the bad scenarios. And in your previous questions, I told you I'm optimistic. I am always optimistic. But on this point, I want to also be very, very careful. We need to be prepared for the worst. And also remember that whether north or any other place, Iran is always behind everything around here. We see all the footprints are leading there, and we must remember, apart from the nuclear thing, we also have on the conventional aspect, we have the long hand of Iran. Are we ready for multi-arena conflict tomorrow? If it starts tomorrow morning, well, you can always be better prepared. We are still now just ending tens of hours of defense budget discussions. And if you want to ask me what was my guideline, it was this: not only the question of how much money, debit, credit rate, but how does this reflect? How does the budget reflect our preparedness to the Iranian question, to the multi-arena conflict, to the greatest missions of the IDF? I can't tell you that everything is now clear, because we have something not synchronized between the budget that is about to be authorized within a couple of hours or a day or two and the multi-annual plan of the IDF. But we are following up on any such development of the budget over time as a committee, because you are asking the question, are we prepared? And if it's not expressed practically, a budget that goes to arms and trainings, etc., all things that are required, then we will not be prepared. It will not come from from the heavens. Let's talk about the greatest threat, the existential threat that is looming at Iran. One of the heads of this conference, Amos Gilad, said 25 years ago or more, started handling this, I think even more than 25 years. So the system knows, I mean both defense system and the government systems know that this is the most important thing we need to be prepared for. And thwarting it as it budges, stopping Iran from reaching a nuclear bomb. And speaking of economy and money and budget, so we are all here from our tax money. I think I'm not exaggerating in saying that 10 cents of every shekel spent here during the past 10 years to the taxes, put to the coffer of the government, went to this exactly to buy submarines and planes and intelligence abilities. And 20-something years after that, we are still standing with no solution. This is a great failure. I don't want to repeat myself, but again, I will say I wish that during the past 20 years, 10 cents of every shekel would go into this third-tier preparations, but I wish, but it's not so sure, because always in the argument between urgent and important, the urgent would always be in priority, and I'm not saying that, in this regard. Of course, the urgent would always need an immediate response. And so some inflammation that is happening in West Bank and Gaza at the north, someone needs to take care of things that are urgent. But I do think that still we have seen changes, dramatic changes in the past few years when it comes to preparation, budgetary, and before as well, because before that we've seen quite gaps between the government ranks and what you could find in de facto in the budget books. We have seen changes, and I sure hope we are on the right track. But you always must remember that we have seen heroic operations, bombing of the nuclear in Iraq and in Syria, and Iran is a whole different story. It's a superpower, it's a different story. I thought we would come here more prepared. Why are you buying all the submarines and planes and intelligence abilities and developments on first ranking in order to take care of a bunch of terrorists that are not so advanced in Gaza? Absolutely not. We have nurtured these abilities so that at this moment, maybe a year ago or 18 months ago, we don't need to stammer as we ask ourselves, are we ready for this challenge or not? You're absolutely right. I also think that I've heard the heads of the defense system, and I don't think they are stammering. On the other hand, if you're expecting people, no matter if they are from the government ranks or from the heads of the IDF and other such organizations, that they would come to a conference or come talk to the public generally, started saying, oh, no big deal, no problem, easy peasy, we'll take care of them in a minute, not at all, nothing at all. No, you wouldn't want to trust such people. This is a great challenge. We truly have a wonderful defense system that is preparing for this. And disregarding the difficulty, I wouldn't do that. And disregarding the hesitations of the government, I wouldn't do that either. It's so easy making a leadership decision, but you must live with the results later on. You must be prepared in advance. And you need international support. You need to take care of the home front, and so many other things that I can't mention. But you can understand. If you understand, you can understand. One last question regarding that. The way you see things, Prime Minister and this government during this office, this term of office, if it does last 4 years, would be required and able, if required, to reach a decision to use military power against Iran, not something focused or, in stealth. Are we close to that? Do you think it might happen during this term of office? I don't know if it could or might or whatever that is, but I will tell you this. Our duty, I'm speaking now under my position. I can't give advices to other people. My job would be to always follow up on the reports we are getting, to make sure that they are reporting preparation to the maximum. It will never be ideal or easy, but we must do the best possible that we can, and we will follow up the budget and everything else from that aspect. Did Iran upgrade its military abilities following its ally, its pact with Russia? And by the way, speaking of the war between Russia and Ukraine, I'm very happy that because one of the most important issues at the moment all over the geopolitics of the world, in the State of Israel, the strategic discussion is held. Simply, people are asking how are we affected. It's not how it affects us. The question is, I have a cousin at the Air Force. Do you really want us to endanger our pilots over Syria because we will take a stance, etc., etc.?
You have to understand the alliance between Russia and Iran is a strategic one. It's not a one-off deal that they sold to them and they bought from them. It's a strategic alliance. It's not going anywhere in the near future. That cousin who serves in the Air Force right now does not depend on the Israeli position on the Russian invasion to Ukraine, but rather they are up to the pressure. They depend on the pressure that the Iranians will exert on Russia. Iran is definitely improving its capabilities in this alliance, and we must do everything we can in order to interfere with that. Ukraine has become a test field for the Iranian drones. I saw that in the Institute of the Ukrainian Intel Ministry, and it's not great secret, but hearing about it is just not the same as seeing it. And I think that we need to think where the State of Israel is standing in this global conflict that will be a topic in the elections in the U.S. And I can tell you in what policy direction should we go, because so far we kind of treaded between the drops, just like your friend Yoel said, sometimes you need to make sounds, carpet sounds. So if we don't make sounds of a carpet, what sounds should we make? And you are saying that we should go towards the West and Ukraine. Are you going to be bold with the U.S. and try to be nice with Russia? What to do? Look, we are at a rare moment in which the moral stance also serves Israel's strategic interests. That's not always the case in global politics. Here, it's a very clear-cut, and we need to understand that the statements that were right a year ago, it was convenient for us to be on the last car of the train, to say we're on the same train as the entire free world, but in the last car. Well, it left the station, the train. We remained on the station on the same car, and we hadn't noticed, and this will have ramifications, and I keep warning about that. And this is said by the chair of the Committee of Foreign Affairs and Security, Yuli Edelstein, that perhaps we need to consider supplying Ukraine with Iron Dome. Yes, we need, among other things, to consider that. I'm happy that there's been some progress, that our smart early warning in Kiev is going to start saving lives and influence the behavior of the population. We can consider other measures as well. Look, I'm not suggesting that we go crazy. No, these are defensive weapons, and to supply offensive weapons, some countries live off of that. But like you called it, treading between the drops, this does not serve the strategic interests of the State of Israel, and we are going to eat that rotten fruit for many, many years. And I'm saying that based on conversations I held here in the Herzliya conference with high-ranking guests from overseas who bring up this issue, and they are asking some very difficult questions. Did you say this to the Prime Minister as well? I've been saying this in any conversation behind any closed door, and I'm very happy to say that some progress has been made. Could you elaborate? I already told you for now that system that was promised back in the days of Gantz when he was in the Ministry of Defense, it's already been deployed, and hopefully there will be some other developments. Is Iron Dome on the table? Look, let me once again tell you, there are all kinds of ways to assist, and I really hope that we will see ourselves reconnecting with the train, because it is the strategic interest of Israel. Look, do you remember an event in which an Israeli prime minister enters office and 5 months, or more than 5 months, this is already May 23rd, almost 6 months, he hasn't been invited to the White House? I cannot answer you historically where this ever happened. I do hope that it works out. It's no secret that I think that the reforms and some other things definitely affected this situation. And here as well, I would say, and I would also say to some of my colleagues that, statements like, okay, we can do without the Americans, these are irresponsible statements. They show that the speaker lacks understanding. And everything I said in the context of Russia and Ukraine, among other things, it also has to do with our position with the U.S. And it's important to understand that throughout our long conversation on the third circle, which is Iran, we will truly and really need close collaboration with the U.S. Things are not as bad as they seem, and there is ongoing cooperation. And I can tell you that I've stopped the monitoring the list of all Senate members and other officials who've come to visit and asked to meet. But still, this direct link to the White House is important, and I do hope that everything will go back to normal soon. And now that the judiciary reform has been suspended, I don't know if it will come back to the table. Do you believe that this invitation will be issued from Washington to Jerusalem? If I believe, I'm a believer. I'm a religious Jew. I'm also a believer, but I would like to think that it's more trivial in this aspect. Look, I truly hope this will happen, not because of sympathy or antipathy. It's become part of the discussion. Those who love Netanyahu say they should invite him, and those who don't like him say he deserves it. But the strategic interest of the State of Israel is for such an invitation to come and to have sincere and serious, candid conversations about all these topics that we touched upon only superficially. Member of Knesset Yuli Edelstein, thank you very much.